This is Mr. Martin. These are video notes for Pre-Calculus Advanced. We're talking about identities. This is example 2 in your notes packet. For this one, we want to show that cosine theta over 1 plus sine theta is equal to 1 minus sine theta over cosine theta. And in this problem, I'm actually giving you a hint on how to solve this, but you won't always get that hint. So we're going to do this by multiplying the numerator and denominator of our first fraction here by the conjugate. So if you don't remember what a conjugate is, I'll remind you in a moment, of 1 plus sine theta. Alright, so this is another popular technique, is using a conjugate to simplify things. So let's go ahead and get started. I've got cosine theta over 1 plus sine theta. And if you recall, a conjugate, all we do is change either addition to subtraction or subtraction to addition. Since I have addition here, I'm going to change that to subtraction. So I'm going to multiply by 1 minus sine theta over 1 minus sine theta. Alright, and this is really 1. Anything divided by itself is just 1. So I'm just multiplying this fraction by a fancy form of 1. And I'm going to go ahead and multiply my numerators and denominators. So in my numerator, I'm going to have cosine theta times 1 minus sine theta. Sometimes you'll want to factor this out, and sometimes you won't. In this case, I'm going to leave it for now. And then I have to FOIL out the bottom. So we'll have this a lot where we'll have conjugates multiplied, and what we end up with here is a difference of 2 squares. So I'll show this for a couple of examples, and then I'll just skip to what the final factoring is going to be, or foiling is going to be. So I'm going to do 1 times 1, which is 1. 1 times minus sine theta, which is minus sine theta. Sine theta times 1, which is plus sine theta. And then sine theta times minus sine theta is minus sine squared theta. Notice where that 2 goes. It goes after the sine. It doesn't go after the theta. If you put it after the theta, it could be confusing where you're squaring the angle. Really, this means sine theta times sine theta, just like we got it from multiplying these two sine thetas. Alright, and we see that these cancel out. Alright, a little technical difficulty there. So minus sine and plus sine, so those cancel out. And we're left with cosine theta times 1 minus sine theta over 1 minus sine squared theta. Okay, so the first technique that we used here is multiplying by a conjugate. Now we're going to use some more of our identities. I know when I see something like this, this reminds me of my Pythagorean identity. I'm just going to write this up in the top, where I have sine squared theta plus cosine squared theta is equal to 1. So there's a couple different ways that you can deal with this. The way that I like to do this is by rearranging my Pythagorean identity to match my problem. So in my problem, I have 1 minus sine squared theta, and I want to figure out something that equals. So this is perfectly legal to do with your identities. If I subtract sine squared theta from both sides, I'll still have an equality because I'm doing the same thing to both sides. These are going to cancel, and I'm going to get cosine squared theta is equal to 1 minus sine squared theta. Okay, so this is what I have in my problem, and I see that it's equal to cosine squared theta. So I'm going to replace this with cosine squared theta because I see that they're equal. So I'm going to continue over here. So I get cosine theta times 1 minus sine theta over, I found out that this is equal to cosine squared theta. Now I have cosine in the numerator and cosine squared in the denominator. So I can cancel one of these. I'll just do that with that one. And I end up with 1 minus sine theta over cosine theta, and that's what I was trying to make it equal to, is equal to 1 minus sine theta over cosine theta. And then we just check it off that we actually proved it. Okay? Sometimes the directions for this will say establish the identity, and we'll do a bunch of those. But again, just a little recap, we used a couple techniques. We used a conjugate technique where we multiplied by a fancy form of 1, and we used our Pythagorean identity where we rearranged our original identity to fit our problem and make things easier. If you have any questions, make sure that you ask, and sometimes it might be a good idea to rewrite these problems on separate paper and give it a go on your own as well. We'll see you in the next video.